And hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Word Alive broadcast. I'm your host, Mike Dobbs, and thank you so much for watching our broadcast, and thank you so much for the great comments that we've been receiving. And we are studying Genesis, the first chapter, moving slowly through the chapter as we talk about the creation. And not only that, but you can't help but talk about the Creator as well. We're going to verse number 20, and the Bible says, "And God said," this is verse 20 of Genesis 1, "And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." So we have been, if you've been following our broadcast, He has created the Shamayim, which is the dome of the sky, over the Eretz, which is the earth. And now He has divided the firmament that is below with the firmament that is above. We'll talk more about that when we talk about the great flood. And then we will see that He draws the land out of the sea, and that is the division between the sea and the land. And of course, I believe that it was one continent, and we call it Pangaea. Later on, it breaks up into another part of the continent, which is called Rodini. But as we study this, we will begin to see that the changes that are taking place in the earth. And now He has created the trees and the grass and all of that. And now it is time for Him to create animals. And so He says, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." And of course, we're talking about the first heaven, which is our sky and our atmosphere. Now, the key word here is abundantly. And when you see God do something, that's the way He does it. He does it abundantly. The Hebrew word is sharatz, which means to wriggle or swarm or abound or breed or bring forth or creep or move. And when we understand that 94% of the animals that were created by God are in the sea, it only leaves 6% on land. And when we see what a diversity we have of all the animals on land, just imagine the diversity of animals that we find in the sea. And as I've already said before in a previous broadcast, according to what I have studied, we've only probably explored about 5% of the oceans. So there are many, many different animals that we are not even aware of. And I have a little feed that I receive every once in a while that tells me about new aquatic creatures, or new ocean creatures that they have found that they did not know existed before this time. And it's happening almost every day as they go out and they find other creatures. So our earth really has not been explored to its fullness. And I think that's also a reflection of the Creator who made it, and the fact that He is limitless in His creativity. And when you begin to see the ecosystem of all that is on the land and then all that is on the sea, you'll begin to see how wonderful and marvelous our Creator truly is, and it's reflected in His creation. So He says, let's bring forth abundantly. God does everything abundantly. He just doesn't know where to stop. He loves to fill things, and we've said that before, but He loves to abound, and He loves to give abundance to. In fact, this is day 5, and the Hebrew word for 5 is hey, and the word there means divine grace or promise. And in fact, it is the word hey that God added to the word Abram, to the name Abram, to make it Abraham. And because of that, Abram means a high father or someone who is distinguished, but Abraham means father of many nations. So when God took the letter Hey and added it to Abraham's name and made him Abraham instead of Abram, He made him father of many nations. He gave them a limitless power of procreative power. And of course, that is because God endowed that upon him, and he is the father of many nations. So Hey is a very powerful letter, and it's a very powerful number. And this letter means divine grace or promise. So God creates the earth. He brings it out of the sea, creates the earth, the trees, the plants, and now He is going to fill the sea with all kinds of life. And He's going to fill the sky with all kinds of birds and flying creations. And there's some of our Christian scientists that are Christians that believe that there were dinosaurs. And of course, we see signs of that in the fossils that we have recovered. And there could have been pteranodons or whatever you want to call them that were flying in the sky at that time, as well as the birds. We don't know what all God created, but we know that He did create it if it was created. If we take it back to the original text, verse 20 reads like this, "And God Elohim said, let the waters bring forth abundantly and teem with the moving creatures and teemers that have life and have a living soul, and foul flyers that fly above the earth in the open firmament upon the face of the expanse of the heaven of heavens." And so the original translation tells us that there is a sky full of birds. There's an ocean full of creation, and that is what he made. And so the next key word we have here would be nephesh. It's the first time we're going to see this word, and of course it is translated from the word moving creatures, and it literally means a breathing creature or an animal of vitality. So we haven't seen that before. We've had plants and we've had flowers and we've had grass, but now we have a breathing creature that is going to breathe in the atmosphere and become a part of the atmosphere in its creation form. And then, of course, the word life. This is the first time the word life will appear, the word kai, and it simply means alive or a living thing. So God creates living things, not just the trees and the plants, but living things. And then in verse 21, he says, "And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good." Now, there's one thing we need to stress in this verse, and it will be stressed many times over and over, that these creatures were created after their kind, the winged fowl after their kind. You see, the difference between creation and evolution is evolution believes that some creature can actually become a higher form and move up in its development from a lower state. But creation believes in adaptivity, which means that things can grow horizontal, but they cannot move to a higher state. In other words, whatever they were created, they will be created in that kind. And so you may have a wolf that is black, because that is the best color for him to be camouflaged. But if he began to move north toward the winter, toward the snow, then it could be that over the process of time, the wolf would become more and more white until finally we have the Arctic wolf, and that is because he is solid white. That is adaptation, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's something God put in as an instinct in animals to be able to change with their environment to survive. And I don't have any problem with that part at all. But saying that a wolf could become something greater, like it could become a horse, well, then you got a problem there, because now you're moving from one animal to a higher level of an animal. Or you could say this wolf could become a human. Well, you got a problem there, because there's a lot of difference, and that animal is moving up to a higher state. And that is what evolution will teach, that we came from monkeys or primates. And so that is what's so wrong with all of that, and they haven't been able to prove it. It is just a theory, and unfortunately it's been promoted as science when it really is nothing more than an unproven theory. And so creation has many proofs. We have a book, and this book will teach us and show us. God explains to Moses, this is how I did it. And I want you to write it down, because I don't want any question. I don't want anybody to say, I wonder how all this happened. All you've got to do is read the book. And if you read the book, you will find that God gave specific detail. He used key words, and these words really did make a difference in the understanding, as we were saying in our last broadcast. He used the word kokab, which is the word for star, but it means something that is burning, something that is rolling and turning like liquid fire, something that would blister. And of course, when you look at that, well, there's no way that Moses or ancient man would ever know that that little twinkling thing out there that we call a star is burning, and that it is rolling, and that it is a ball of fire. There was no way we could have known that. But God knew it, because he created it, and he passes that information in the Word onto Moses, which makes it clear. And so it's the same thing here. The nephesh, the moving creatures. Now they are breathing creatures. They are animals with life. They're animals with vitality, and they're going to bring after their own kind. They're not going to bring some other kind. They're not going to develop into something else. I believe God put that in the Word to prevent nonsense like evolution, because he's saying they all produced after their kind. They did not move into another kind, but they moved horizontally, not vertically. And he says this, great whales. And the word there, whales, actually is a word called tanin. And we actually see that word used again in the Bible several times, which can mean a marine or a land monster, a sea serpent. It also is translated a jackal, which is kind of like a wolf, or a dragon, or a sea monster, or a serpent, or even a whale. So it's indicating not a whale like we would see a whale, but a very large creature. And so God created great whales. Why was this mentioned? Because God is trying to say, I created very tiny little fish, and I created these huge fish. You know, there is no limit to my creativity. And when you think of all of the different, maybe even the varieties of fish that you know, and the colors, I used to have an aquarium, and I had tropical fish, and I'm looking at them. Of course, I see God in everything, and my wife says I can find a sermon in everything, but I'm looking at them thinking, wow, God, you created these things. These are amazing creatures that you created, and you've even got the little sucker fish that will clean your tank for you, and they don't even charge you. You've got all of these different creatures that work together. They work together to create an ecosystem where everything depends on everything else. And of course, then you got the food chain, where you're on the smaller bottom of the food chain, you're going to be eaten, and the bigger part of the food chain is going to eat you. So everything is designed to support itself and to continue creation into the next generation. What a tremendous balance that God has created, and an amazing ecosystem that He has created with all of these myriad of creatures that have their own form of intelligence. I had one fish that was a cichlid, and I'll tell you, he loved to pick up rocks off the bottom and drop it on the heads of fish below him. And he wasn't just, you say, oh, he's just dropping rocks. No, he would go and position himself and look down and drop the rocks on the fish below him just out of mischief. And I watched that fish for so many. I thought, wow, that is so amazing. They have their own level of intelligence and their own level of what they do and their instinct and their adaptation of moving from one thing to the next, but never leaving their kind. And that is the stress that is in this verse that God is trying to make clear, is that every creature that moveth and the waters brought forth abundantly. See, in the first verse we read in verse 20, He made the command. In verse 21, the command comes to pass instantly. And the moment He speaks it. And I don't think that He created little fryers, what we call the little tiny fish. What He created was massive whales and sharks and jellyfish and octopus in their full size, in their mature state. Everything is being created not in its infancy, but everything is created in maturity to bring forth so that it can be productive, because everything that God is a part of is productive. And we're going to continue to talk about this productive God that is continuing to deal with things and build things and develop things and grow things. As I was saying, the trees grew to their fullest potential. The flowers grew till they bloomed and brought forth seed. The grass grew to its potential until it brought forth seed. Everything that came forth from the Word of God that was spoken came to its fullest, brought forth its best. All because the God that was speaking is the productive God. He's the God that will cause everything to bring forth and carry on into the next generation. What an amazing Creator. What an amazing creation. And I'm so glad that I know Him, and I hope that you do. And I thank you so much for watching our broadcast, because we're doing all we can to make the Word come alive to you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Word Alive broadcast. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel. Once you've subscribed, make sure to click on the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time a new episode is released. If you'd like to support this ministry, you can do so by checking out our Patreon page and signing up for one of the provided monthly tiers. A link to our Patreon page can be found down in the description. God bless you, and we'll see you next time as we continue to make the Word come alive to you.